And it's another night of the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Joe Chaffee, FiOS 1 News Long Island and FiOS 1 News New Jersey.
And Joe Rayo, FiOS 1 News Lower Hudson Valley. And the King has returned from his triumphant Springfield appearance last night.
It was fun. I had a really nice time. The people were great, and we had a nice conversation that spilled into the parking lot afterward.
Right. Well, it went almost 2 hours.
And I drove home with no traffic, which was even better. All right, so we've got frost issues tonight, and one of the things I was worried about this evening, Joe, was the wind, because it was still pretty breezy going into this evening, and the winds have dropped off. I'm going to bring up, let's bring up the current map here.
Well, it looks like it will eventually evolve by later tonight into a classic, excuse me, radiational cooling night, or as I call it, a 3C night, clear, calm, and cold.
Right.
And widespread in temperatures in the Hudson Valley, at least. Urban areas like Yonkers, New Rochelle, Mount Vernon will probably be hovering, and coastal areas too, probably be hovering around 40. But meanwhile, all you have to do is go inland, especially into the valley spots in places like Orange County, Putnam County, Dutchess. And
well, they're already down in the mid-30s there.
Right.
It's coming up on 9:20.
Right, upper 20s.
Eastern time, yeah. So it's in the mid-30s up in much of northwestern New Jersey. Still hovering in the mid-40s around the warmer urban areas. I don't think there's going to be an issue there, and probably not for Nassau County. Suffolk, just to the east as you head out toward West Hampton. It's 37 at Shirley, it's 34 at West Hampton, so there'll be some upper 20s probably in the Pine Barrens as well.
No question about it.
And
that's the one place in the entire tri-state area where if I had to put money down on some place that's going to radiate like crazy, it'd be the Pine Barrens of eastern Long Island.
Yeah, the Pine Barrens down in New Jersey do pretty well also.
Right.
In central and south Jersey, they also radiate like crazy, and then we actually have temperatures down in that area. In the upper 30s. The darker outline here, this is where all the freeze warnings are up through much of interior Connecticut, from Putnam and Orange County and Dutchess County under a freeze warning, the northwestern counties of New Jersey, mainly to the east of 287. The frost advisory for the southern counties, so go south and east of 78 and down the rest of the state except on the coast. And on Long Island, it's just in Suffolk County with the frost advisory.
Can we just back up for 1 second, because
where'd you want to go?
The fact about the Pine Barrens in eastern Long Island, and I forgot his name, but he lived out in Noyak.
Oh, Don Thompson.
Don Thompson, and he's a member of the Long Island Weather Observers Club many years ago. And when the Weather Service was based in Rockefeller Center, he used to constantly complain to them, either by phone or by letter, telling them that they were always too warm for eastern Long Island. They arbitrarily would say, Long Island, it's a coastal area, they're warmer than the inland spot. And he kept telling them about the fact that, that there were places on eastern Long Island that dropped into the much colder like crazy. And it wasn't until the National Weather Service moved from Rockefeller Center out east to Upton or Brookhaven that they saw for themselves that Don Thompson told the truth, and now they.
You know what? Up until I can remembering back in the late 70s or early 80s, I don't even think that West Hampton Beach, Zabriskie Airport, they had OBS there, but I don't think that they were OBS that you got to see on the regular sequence of temperatures. So I don't even know that they actually had those temperatures handy on an hourly basis like we do now. Plus now we have all these other stations all in between.
Well, when you were at that other news gathering agency and used to do the weather there in the mornings, and you had weather observers out in that area, Don, for example. You also had somebody out in Mud Creek, which was not too far away.
Right, that was Carol Burnson, I remember,
and she too had very cold temperatures. So it's kind of amazing that, after so many years, they finally converted over and they wised up, and they actually now are reflecting those very cold temperatures. Whereas back in a former era, they'd say like temperatures warmer near the coast, and it was never that way.
And it was never that way. Yeah. And this high with this cold air moves out, so it looks like we're warming up. We're going to warm up subpar. I forgot exactly what is exactly average now, Joe.
Well, in the Hudson Valley, the normal high now is about 62 degrees. So if you want to put a range on it, let's say 59 to 64.
Okay,
so
that's fair enough.
We'll be in that vicinity tomorrow. In fact, I even said on our FiOS 1 Hudson Valley forecast, seasonably mild, because there may be one or two spots, especially inland, like Stormville, for example, that might actually get up to like 63, 64, which is seasonably mild for this time of the year.
And then Saturday, I thought, as far as a comparison, it probably lines up like yesterday did, Wednesday, where we got into the mid-60s. So there might be some showers early, and then a break, maybe the sun comes out, and then maybe another shower in the late afternoon and evening. But here comes the next shot of cold air for Sunday and Monday, which probably Sunday into Monday, which may wind up being a repeat performance of today on Sunday. The colder air, the coldest air actually comes in Sunday morning, and then we wait for the high to build in. So I'm thinking Sunday it'll be on the breezy side, like today was. Then the high builds in, maybe another round of frost and freezes Sunday night into Monday morning, and then the high goes out. And then the next front comes down with a shot of cold air for Tuesday night, Wednesday. Doesn't look overly cold, but it'll be a little below normal.
Yeah, Tuesday night, Wednesday doesn't look like much, as they say at the Weather Service, sensible weather.
Yes.
I always get a little
assume that it's from a sensible forecaster, but go on.
Right.
I love you, Bill Goodman. Don't worry. Go on.
Cloud cover and maybe a shower here and there. You know, when the little wrinkle goes by, but then we go right back to dry and fair weather, probably for the mid and late week period next week, and then all bets, I guess, are off. We try to figure out what the heck's going to happen, not this weekend, but the following weekend.
Well, and that's the big question, because we do have a lot going on. I thought this would be a good time to look at the tellies, and not the Teletubbies, but the tele connections. Let me just get this upper air ready, and I have them up over here. There they go. So, you know what, I'm going to, just to make it a little easier.
I don't mean to again interrupt, but wasn't this today the day then that the good doctor was going to come on with his...
well, he wasn't going to come on.
I'm not coming on here, but I mean, like, maybe he would have posted an announcement as to...
It's on. He did post a blog late this afternoon, and it's so long that I have to wade through this. So, because he talks about different things. He actually also addresses, which everybody already knows about, how the European long range is, overly cold and snowy for much of the winter in the Northeast, and he kind of got fascinated with that. But I'm going to wade through it, and hopefully we can get him back on at some point in the next couple of weeks so he can explain what his feelings are. I think he's probably, one of the things we're waiting for is the final numbers with respect to Siberian snow cover growth and the North American snow cover growth. We've got another 13 days to see where that peaks out. But as far as later next week is concerned, nothing of consequence is going to happen probably through at least Thursday and maybe through Friday. But when we look at these teleconnections, one thing that stands out to me, well, two things. One is the strength of the Pacific North America Index, so that kind of favors the ridging up in the western part of the U.S. And the fact that the NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation, goes from positive to not strongly negative, but negative enough in our long-range period starting early next week and beyond, indicating a little bit of a blocky nature to the pattern late next week and next weekend. And this is where models were kind of pointing to the possibility of some kind of storm system impacting the East Coast. And I think, Joe, as usual, I described this on my YouTube channel tonight as the first one of the season.
It's always the most difficult.
Well, it's difficult because you've been out of it since we've been out of this since the 4 nor'easters of last March.
It literally is like when baseball players go to spring training in February and get back into shape because, really they haven't played in several months, and the same holds true for us. We haven't really delved into sudden cold air masses.
It's like watching preseason football.
Right, same thing. Yeah.
Same idea.
Yeah.
So this is all kind of new to us, and we don't yet have a flavor for how these weather patterns are going to play out over the long haul. So we're kind of going along for the ride, and
we don't know which model is going to have that. Like, for example, in the latter part of this past winter, it seemed like the NAM of all models seemed to have the hot hand, so to speak.
Right, and it did. It had the hot hand for a good long time last week.
Right, and you wouldn't have expected that. You know, most people say, "Oh, the European is king. We'll go." You know, but it was the NAM that had constantly.
And the European had an awful time a lot of the time.
The European had a terrible winter last year.
So the GFS late this afternoon. The same thing that we've been seeing with these troughs lifting out and new troughs diving in. And then, now, here's where you start. If you look up in the upper right, folks, you'll watch that brownish area get browner and darker. That is where we're getting an upper high that builds between the Azores and Iceland. And this is what the the North Atlantic Oscillation is seeing in terms of going negative like it is. And so it's kind of blocky, and while it does disappear, another ridge builds in its place, and this is at the end of next week, and you see it here going from the Azores up to Greenland.
Right.
And as a result, now that you got all this energy coming into the west, that makes a fairly deep trough on the GFS. The problems, Joe, are typical of all these systems, and it's with regards to timing of all these different puzzle pieces. The model run earlier today had a pretty strong gale center riding up just along the coast. This model run actually had more of an inland primary low, although you could certainly make the case that it wasn't that different. I'll show you on the surface map. We can go back and take a look at it. I'll bring it up close in here. Let's go back. So this is the new run, and so we've got these cold shots, so we know all about that. So now we're through Wednesday and Thursday and through Friday, and here it comes. You get this low comes across the Gulf states. You've got another low that drops down into the Tennessee Valley, and this is where there's probably an occluded low, a low that's sitting up in northeast Ohio, but there's an occluded front with probably a low at the point of occlusion, somewhere along over New Jersey or off the New Jersey coast. Big soaking rain and southeast winds for next Saturday night to Sunday, and then clearing and colder after that. The old run of the GFS had more with this sort of with a low piling more of the energy on the coast because of how it times out everything.
Right.
And this is where we're going to have to work this out. I mean, it appears that something is going to happen late next week or next weekend, more likely next weekend, but where it is and how it plays out remains to be seen. Obviously, something like this would be a bit more difficult to work through in terms of rain and wind. But even the other way, it might still be a bit problematic.
Well, the GFS has been more robust. In either the 12Z or the 18Z, we still get clobbered one way, shape, or form with some form of wind or precipitation, whereas the European and the Canadian model does kind of spawn some kind of a coastal system, but they keep the coastal system gliding along just out to our south and don't really, come up and punch us out, so to speak.
Here's the European.
Right. See now.
And the European, this is a matter of timing of these short waves and where the upper trough is. Is it over the, just near the east coast, or is it further west, or are the pieces phased, or if they're not phased? The European kind of keeps everything a bit separate here, so you get this deepening gale center that goes out just far enough offshore where it's not it isn't problematic. And
we should acquaint our especially those viewers who are not too deeply into the science of forecasting and meteorology, but where the latitude line of 40 degrees meets with the longitude or the meridian line of 70 degrees west, that's called the benchmark. And generally speaking, when you have a storm passing across that benchmark or a little ways to the north and west of the benchmark, that is when we get coastal systems that really give us and do a number on us. When they pass south and east of the benchmark, they're just sometimes a little far enough offshore so that maybe we'll just get a glancing blow. This one right now, just eyeballing it, if you want to believe at face value what the European is saying, that seems to be just a little bit too far to the south and east of the benchmark to really give us much more than just maybe some clouds and a little bit of precipitation.
I was going to come back full screen, but there was one thing just suddenly popped up. So since we were talking about snow cover when you, I'm going to get the GFS up. So when we look at the snow cover growth across North America, that is going to continue at a fairly rapid pace, with the exception being up in parts of southwestern Canada because of that upper high being there. So, but for the next 10 days, looks like the snow drought in Alaska ends, as they seem to get a fair amount of snow, as does northwest Canada, and also central and eastern Canada seem to be rather bullish as far as the additional snow. So the snow cover over North America is going to continue to grow close to the top of the charts of the last over the last 15 or so years.
Right.
We are also going to see some acceleration of the snow cover growth in Eurasia, and we'll bring that up. But right now, at least through this date, it remains very tepid, and it's on the low end of the last 14 or so years.
Well, I mean, look at for example, Mongolia. How many of you know where Mongolia is? But I mean, like Mongolia, they have some very tall mountains, and they tend to be quite cold, maybe not quite as cold as Siberia, but it doesn't seem like Mongolia has as much snow as you would expect.
Well, one of the issues, and Dr. Cohen talks about this, is the fact that much of Asia is actually showing above normal temperatures through this period. So I'll just back it up. I mean, there are pockets where it's cold, but it's warm. You know, it's warmer than normal over a good chunk of Siberia here through this period. So the upper pattern seems to be more favorable. It is more favorable when you look at North America and you look at the anomalies. We'll run it back. You certainly see more of the below normal or near normal throughout much of Canada through the period, through the 7 to 10 day period. It's a little more above normal as you go west, because that's where the upper high, you're getting ridging there, but it's not as warm. It's certainly cooler than average through much of the time,
right.
And you're getting the snow cover growth. So look, these are all they're fun things to look at. None of them, no one index that we ever look at is definitive. You can't put your eggs in any basket in weather. I think we all know that. But I think it also needs to be reinforced sometimes, because people do get kind of wrapped up in some of these things that we look at, and think that they're the answer to their prayers. If they're a snow lover, they're jumping up and down, or maybe they're not jumping up and down. That's why I think it's just probably better to just let the whole thing play out.
It's interesting. I looked at the last 10 years, just the last decade of records at Central Park, and I noticed that we never, in at least the last 10 years, we've never had a winter where we've had below normal temperatures from December all the way through March. We've actually had a couple of winters where we've actually had above normal temperatures from December all the way through March.
Right.
But more often than not, the best that we can do if you're a snow lover or a winter weather lover is 3 out of 4. Ultimately, sometime during the winter season, there's at least 1 month that juts out and says, oh, wait a minute, it's not going to be all that cold. It's going to be that. And I did look also at the snow records. The last time we had snow in the single digits at Central Park was 3.5 inches. That was the winter of 2011-2012. And that there was hardly anything going on that year in terms of snowfall. And then again, we've had those years where in January and in February, we've had a couple of those years where we had like 30 and 40 inches in a single month, record-breaking month. So,
and I think crazy. There have been a couple of winters too where every month has been above normal in snowfall. So it doesn't necessarily the snow and the cold don't correlate.
Exactly.
It just needs to be cold when it snows.
We mentioned that with Dr. Cohen last week or a couple of weeks ago. Why is it that we've had winters where we've had amazingly warm temperatures, and then you look in the snow box, you don't expect to see anything, and all of a sudden you see like 15 inches, 20. Where the hell did that come from?
I know.
Where the heck did that come from?
Kelly Flexer asked, they are saying, whoever they are, it's those pronouns that are out there. I always love being referred to as a pronoun.
Right.
Especially when you're in the room with the subject that they don't know what you do, and they go, well, they say. And you go up to them and said, I'm they,
Looks like the Daffy Duck, right, with Bugs
Right.
Bunny.
Pronoun trouble. Yes. DAWFY Well, Kelly Flexer says they are saying that the winter will be warmer than normal for the Northeast and dry. Is that Noah, and how reliable is this? I didn't even look at Noah's winter forecast. Did it come out?
I don't know. I mean, you can go to the Climate Prediction Center website and you can pick up seasonal forecasts for three months at a time, going all the way out, believe it or not, Joe, to the end of next year. They're actually making probability forecasts for temperature and precipitation all the way out to the end of next year. This is the same group of scientists that used to take shots at the old Farmer's Almanac.
Right.
How could you forecast that? And now all of a sudden they've gotten into the business now of, giving probability forecasts for October, November, December of 2019 in terms of temperature. And that basically is it. You probably could go right now and see what they're calling for what? October, November, December, January,
yeah.
February,
Bob Apple says we went from instant summer to instant winter frost 23 days earlier this year than last year. Yeah, and no such thing as global warming. He says just global variance. Well, that's an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this year the switch was flipped a lot earlier than it was last year.
Right.
All right, so everybody seems to. I guess everybody has seen the Noaa forecast except us. But yeah, they're probably because they're looking at the El Nino, which, by the way, is on the cusp of being an El Nino, a weak El Nino. I don't know that I would necessarily put my eggs in a weak El Nino as far as a warmer winter here. I don't know if I would, I would necessarily agree with that. I just think there are too many other pieces of the puzzle that need to be in place with regards to the kind of winter it's going to be.
I'm thinking back to this strong El Nino, probably one of the greatest El Ninos that we've seen on record in 97, 98. But weak El Ninos, from what I've heard from those who do this kind of stuff, looking long range, say that those are the El Nino years where you really would look forward to possibly some significant snowfalls here in the Northeast. I'm not exactly sure how this all pans out or works out, but we do have a relatively weak El Nino in place now.
Right. Well, knowing that Noah does, how they look at their forecasts. I haven't read it yet, but I can remember from what they've written in prior forecasts. They're very big on the El Nino La Nina thing, and I also know that the Climate Prediction Center will address the volatility of things like of blocking in Greenland, the North Atlantic Oscillation, and all the rest of it. But they don't really include it very much in their overall analysis, probably because of the volatility. And they don't look at snow cover growth to the extent that, say, Dr. Cohen does. So I would be, again, look, if you want to be cynical, which I like to be, you could use that as a contrary indicator. If they came out and said that this was going to be the coldest winter ever, you know that the odds are that it probably wouldn't happen. And I don't necessarily mean that as a criticism, but the fact remains that there are just too many variables. I don't remember a single forecast, a single long-range forecast last October that called the brutal cold period that we experienced from late November into the first part of January. Do you?
No.
So who? Honestly, it's cute that they say what they say, but how important is it really?
I have this gut feeling, considering what we're seeing now with the snow cover growth over Canada, that we might have what you might call a bookend weather scenario for wintertime, and that is we'll go like gangbusters into the winter season, December, with some very cold outbreaks and also some snowy outbreaks as well. But all of a sudden, sometime in the middle, January, February, we'll have a spell of unseasonable warmth, and you can't say that doesn't happen because it's happened the last couple of years in the wintertime. And then we go right over into another spell of wintry weather for March. And if this sounds familiar to you, it's pretty much what we've had last year.
Right.
And who's to say it can't happen again?
David Schwartz gave me the best laugh of the day because he actually dug around and through history And apparently there was a strong El Nino back in 350 AD, which was very, very critical in the Huns' decision of their invasion of Europe. And my response to that was, well, maybe they must have saw the GFS.
That would make a good cartoon. Have Hagar the Horrible reading the latest computer models, right?
Yeah, can you imagine? Well, look, and thank you, Jason Barry. Correct. And no, there was, who foresaw the 4 nor'easters of the apocalypse last March?
Right.
We've got Dan McSwain from. I got to get rid of the smiley faces. Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. Welcome aboard. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the chat board.
I've been up there a number of times. My in-laws live in Brodhesville, which is not too far from Bloomsburg, and they get some interesting weather. In fact, my father-in-law lives in Brodhesville. My brother-in-law lives in Kunkeltown. And because of the elevation,
you gotta love those Pennsylvania town names.
The difference in elevation that sometimes my father-in-law gets something completely different in the winter as opposed to what my brother-in-law gets. It's a very interesting part of the northeastern Pennsylvania.
Tim Ryan, how bad will the wind be on Sunday? I think it'll be like today. It'll be breezy at times, and maybe you get some gusts up to 25 or 30. And then late in the day, it should start to drop off, much like it did today, and then drop off really, sharply after sunset. That's kind of how I was looking at it today.
Yep.
As that next high builds in. So I think that pretty much covers it. You got anything else to mention today?
No, I have. It's pretty much cut and dry for the next several days upcoming. Not much in the way of precipitation, Joe. I mean, we might get a little bit of shower activity after midnight tomorrow night, and again here and there on Saturday. But then it looks like next week's going to be a fairly dry week, and it's just going to be a matter of seeing what happens, not this weekend, but next weekend with the first possible atrocity of the fall or early winter season.
Yeah, let's see how it plays out.
And we'll see how it plays out. Is this the same system that the Canadian a few days ago was saying, like 1 to 2 feet of snow?
No, that was something else. That was for the middle part of next week with the next cold front dropping down.
I'm sure we'll have more than our fair share of that kind of stuff going
on. Yeah, part of me looks forward to it, and part of me right now is kind of dreading it because that's a stressful time for all of us. All right, so by the way,
or as my grandfather would have said, "Ufa."
Yes. By the way. My next library talk on Long Island is going to be on Wednesday, December 12th in Babylon, and it's a ways away, but I may have some more Jersey appearances coming up in the coming months. So for those of you in New Jersey, stay tuned because I do have a couple of places on the table, and we'll see if we can work it out on the schedule. And if you have a library that you want us to come to your local library, or one of us, or if it's the right day of the week, possibly both of us, let your library know that we do this sort of thing, and have them get in touch with us, and we'll see if we can work it into our busy schedules.
You get both of us there, we'll actually put on our straw hats and I'll use our canes.
Oh, God. Can you imagine?
And make an entrance like Overture.
And don the lights. All right. There's more, by the way, on all of this stuff going on weather-wise with regards to the long range and later next week. If you want to check that out, you can go to my platform on Patreon. There's a link there on the description to tonight's live stream. So if you'd like, take a look and consider joining the Patreon platform. And you can jump over to my YouTube channel where I did an hour between 7 and 8 o'clock talking about all of this and getting into it in great detail as well. So if you haven't had enough now, there's more for you to look at if you like.
King of all media.
Yeah, I guess. I'm extra tired.
Well, I will close out by saying that he's Joe Chiaffi, Fios 1 News, Long Island. Fios 1 News. You forgot New Jersey.
New Jersey.
You're forgetting New Jersey.
I know.
And you just spoke there last night.
I'm tired, Joe.
All right. New Jersey.
And he's Fios 1 News, Lower Hudson Valley.
Not to be confused with the Upper Hudson Valley.
Correct.
Yeah.
Jeff Banson is on tomorrow for all 3 zones, Long Island, New Jersey, and Hudson Valley. And?
Oh, then we have Brittany Borer and Addison Green. They come in the midday hours, and they do a wonderful job until you and I decide to stroll in around 2 in the afternoon.
Right, and we'll have tomorrow's pizza day, so we'll have pizza. Maybe Ralph's
That's right.
Maybe Ralph will order mozzarella sticks or chicken wings, one or the other.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right, folks, have a great evening. Don't forget, check out those other sources. Either you check out the Patreon or you can go to the YouTube channel, and also you can go to my website, meteorologistjoechaffee.com. Have a great evening, everybody.
Bye.